What's going on, guys? This is the Combat Source Podcast. My name is Josh, and I want to thank you guys all for joining me as it is Tuesday afternoon, May 31st, 2022. We got a good, great, fantastic episode for you guys. I want to thank you guys all for joining me. A reminder, make sure you guys like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review, whatever you can do for the show. Share with your friends, talk about it. This is something that is, is evolving and it's growing, and it's going to continue to evolve as time goes on. Update, this is still primarily an audio podcast. I haven't built and formatted the studio just yet in terms of getting for a video portion of it to start recording it in that sense, and then I'll be on YouTube. But the audio format is on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. It's all there. So bear with me. I want to thank you guys all for joining me again. Make sure you guys subscribe, and let's get into the show. So it was a slow week last week. There wasn't even a lot of news. I mean, last week's episode was all right. You know what I mean? I'm very critical. It wasn't the greatest episode as far as I'm concerned, because a lot of it was topics. There wasn't a lot going on. A couple of matchups, a couple of interesting fights for the weekend. You had Gervonta Davis and Rolly Romero. You had Pudzianowski and KSW, which I think I even forgot to mention. And you had a couple of Cage Warriors events. So there really wasn't really much to speak on. The Romero and the Davis fight was probably the biggest event of the weekend. That ended in, I believe, in the 6th round. And for those, I don't know if you guys are all into sports betting. I do a lot of my betting with my bookie. I don't know. I find them easier to deal with. DraftKings is only exclusive to certain states. I'm in California. They don't operate the same way in California. My bookie is, I believe, an international kind of company, and they handle a lot of their transactions internationally. And so, I don't know. It's easier to just go on and bet some money and win some money and extract that money and all that. So it's just an easier system to use. I like it. I prefer it. I didn't do that great this past weekend. I think I bet the fight to at least go the distance. I knew Davis was going to win. I was hoping that it was going to, Romero was going to last and last a little bit longer and not get into such a firefight with Davis, but those were high hopes. Everybody I saw commenting on the fight were all expecting Davis to probably knock him out or by TKO, just based on styles. I figured it was a high probability because also the heat involved in this fight. There was a lot of trash talk. So I decided to put some money on Davis to win by decision. And I thought it was a safe bet. I thought Davis was going to probably take it. I wasn't really too concerned about that, but I was concerned about a TKO possibility or a KO possibility. And unfortunately, that ended up happening. The fight didn't even go halfway, or only went halfway. I think for Davis, Gervonta Davis, Tank Davis, this was a big fight for him. I think he's separating himself from Mayweather Promotions, Mayweather Gym. He's going out on his own, becoming more of an independent, big name fighter. When he has fights like this, I think it just cements his status as an all-star player in the sport in his division. He's small, but he's quick, he's powerful, he speaks well, he's entertaining, and he is never really ever in a boring fight. And that's what you want from a guy. You know what I mean? He's young. I think he's also maturing pretty fast. He speaks about fatherhood and all that, and I think that's what's kind of helping that progression. I think Romero is still a little immature, a little unpolished, still a little green as far as strategy goes. He's a powerful, dynamic striker, great boxer, a little unorthodox, but the strategy wise and his in ring IQ is still catching up to his abilities, and I think that's his shortcoming from what I can see. Davis, I mean, you look at his abilities, his in ring IQ, his strategy. The guy's just on another level right now, and I think he's getting better and better. And he's going to go down as an all-time great. Right now, he's already being talked about as just being a potential all-time great. I don't see that as I don't see that something like that won't happen. I think he will. There's not a lot of competition that can deal with a guy like that. You look at the rest of the fights this weekend. KSW put on a great event. They always kind of do. They have great production. They have great talent. They have a lot of that Eastern European talent. They have big names. They have, a couple of guys have come from the UFC to there, or from KSW to the UFC, such as Ariane Lipski was a KSW fighter. So they're a big player in Europe and Poland, and their production is just fantastic. And Mariusz Pudzianowski, who's a former strongman, who I didn't even realize until I think I saw him on the Ariel Helwani show, the MMA Hour. I saw him in his interview there, and I remember when he first got into the sport, and man, it's what is he, 14, 15 and 7 now or something like that? Like, and he's been fighting since like 2010, 2012. I don't remember when he started fighting, but man, it's been quite a while. It's been almost over a decade of him fighting, and I remember him getting into the sport and him having his first fight, and it's crazy how time flies. It really does. He had a vicious knockout. I believe it was two right hands. One was a cross, or a right hook, and then the other one was a right uppercut. Followed up with the right uppercut and knocked out his opponent. I believe. Let me get the name of his opponent. Former middleweight champion. Mariusz Pudzianowski defeats Mikhail Matarella at KSW 70. That was just it was cool. That was a big highlight for him. I think Pudzianowski's in his early 40s and doesn't look to slow down anytime soon. He takes his fights when he can. He eats as much as he wants. He's a big dude. And, I mean, he's going to continue doing it as long as he's successful. I'm sure he's not cheap either, so definitely a high price tag for him. But big win for Mariusz Pudzianowski, big win for Gervonta Davis over the past weekend. You had a couple of Cage Warriors events, but not much else to really talk about in terms of event coverage. That was pretty much it. Pudzianowski, where do you see him? Where do I see him go from here? Whoever they put in front of him, whoever they want. He's not leaving KSW. That's not happening. We're not seeing him fight any other big names or any other promotions, cross promotions, nothing like that. Mariusz Pudzianowski is who he is. He's a KSW fighter. He's going to stay there, and he's going to fight other monsters, and that's pretty much it. And we're going to eat it up and enjoy it and love it and all that. Gervonta Davis, I don't know where he goes from here. You have people calling him out like Ryan Garcia. You have a bunch of other people calling him out. I mean, the guy is holding all the cards. He could do whatever he wants. I see him fighting probably like later on this year, probably in the fall. It'd be interesting to see who he competes against. Always a good fun outing with Gervonta Davis. Let's see. As far as news goes, you have there's a lot of talk about Masvidal and Conor McGregor. I don't see that happening. I really don't. I don't see Conor choosing Masvidal as his first opponent. I mean, I think Conor's a little bit. I think they're even in terms of their stylistically, and in ring IQ and in ring ability. I think they're fairly similar fighters. I think Masvidal's a little bit more of a calculated, accurate striker when he wants to be. Offers a little bit more variety, a little bit more traditional Muay Thai-ish, where Conor is, a little bit more unorthodox, throws, from awkward positions and is a little bit more of a white, straight line stance, karate stance. You know what I mean? So it's a different styles, but I mean, it's a fun matchup. Obviously, I mean, if I was a UFC, I'll just book it. Who gives a fuck about their legacies? You know what I mean? But that's being talked about. There's a lot of some trash talk about between the two. You have a couple other stories going on. Recently, I believe it was yesterday or today. I believe it was today. Paulo Costa was accused of a physical dispute with the nurse over his vaccination status. I'm not sure if this was in. I'm not sure where this took place. City called it him. Yeah, I think this was in Brazil. Costa 31, 26-year-old female nurse. She went to the police station, filed a police report against Costa that he got violent with her when she questioned him about his vaccination status. So wherever he was, I don't know if he was at a medical facility. I'm sure he was, but not a good situation for Paulo Costa. I think it puts a lot of his future plans in question right now. This depending on how the situation goes. Is he going to face jail time? Is he going to face a criminal investigation? A criminal trial? Is he going to have to pay a fine? Oh yeah. We'll see what the. Well, I don't know. Paulo Costa is one of those guys that you're waiting to see how far the ball drops. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have a guy like Renan Barão who ends up, losing his title, getting outclassed, getting kind of shut down as far as his skills, and reaches his ceiling when Dillashaw came in. And, I mean, talk about a fall from grace, man. You know what I mean? It'd be interesting to see what happens to Costa. You know what I mean? Like, because everything that's come out about Costa since losing to Israel has been just not good. The news about him has been not good. Whatever he's doing outside of the cage has been not good. His talk online has been horrible. I mean, any other organization probably would have cut him for some of the stuff he said online. This type of stuff where he's getting into physical altercations, getting into legal issues outside of the cage, and it's I don't know what's going on with him. You talk about all these hair transplant surgeries and you name it. The guy is falling downhill and spiraling into this, mental crisis pretty fast. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of any other person that handled a loss as worse as Paulo Costa has. It's very interesting to see what's happening with this guy, man. It's coming from a title contender, a title challenger to from one of the best in the division to a joke in the division. Pretty freaking quick, man. Pretty quick. A couple of matchups. You have Levitt versus Pimblett is scheduled, I believe, for a European card. I'm not sure which one they're going to put him on. You have Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I believe she's scheduled for a fight coming up soon. Robert Whittaker versus Marvin Vettori is scheduled for the upcoming Paris debut for the UFC. This is looking to, I believe, take place, September 3rd. September 3rd is the UFC's debut in Paris, France. And that's going to be a big one. That's going to be a good one, man. If you worked for the UFC, I would love to, work for that event. It looks like Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori may or may not be headlining that event. But that is September 3rd. Is scheduled for that date. Let me see here. Not a lot of other matchups scheduled. Upcoming fights scheduled for fighters. Nothing of note. So, I mean, you look at some of the talk online. A lot of it's just talk. Dominic Cruz coming out, saying he wants to fight. He only says no to dates. Chito Vera calling him out, saying he's saying no to him a bunch of times. I would like to see that fight. I hope they book that fight. I think that's a fight to make. That's a great fight for Chito. That's a great fight for Dominic, and it'll be good to see where Dominic's at with that fight. And if Chito can win that fight, that is a feather in his cap, because there's a lot of heat between the two. That's a huge name, if not one of the biggest names in the division, and a top opponent, a top 5, top 6 opponent. You know what I mean? So I think that's a fantastic fight. I hope they book that fight. It seems like Dominic is somewhat open to that fight. Who knows what he's going to do behind the scenes, but Chito is pushing for that fight. I hope they make that fight. There's been a lot of talk I've seen on different podcasts, especially the MMA Hour, and I'm not going to especially if you're a fan of the MMA Hour and watch a lot of related podcasts. The topic of open scoring has been brought up. I am in favor of it. I don't think there's much of an argument against it. The arguments that I've heard against it have all been entertainment based, and I get it. Some of the excitement of a decision at the end of a title fight, would be kind of disrupted with open scoring, because people kind of have an idea of what their fight's going to go, how it's going to be led to. But that's fine. It's just that in the end, it's just that they know who won ahead of time. A couple minutes ahead of time. That's fine. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's going to disrupt the enjoyment, the excitement of the round, of the fight. I don't think in terms of stalling and having boring fights towards the end of each final rounds, those final rounds being disrupted by action because of one fighter knowing he's ahead. That argument is kind of, squashed because the opposing fighter is going to push forward. You know what I mean? What's the other fighter going to do? That's where that's where a ref comes into play. Avoiding, calling out stalling, calling out the lack of action, and that goes in for the judges. You have one fighter that's avoiding a fight. You have another fighter that's pushing the action, landing strikes, maybe potentially. All in all, that person may win the round, and then what? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of ways they could do it. They can make it open to the public. They can make it open to just the corners. They can make it open to everybody to know who and which rounds went to which person. And I don't see that being a big issue. The fact that Andy Foster, I believe, made a comment on the MMA Hour saying that he was open to it, at least in the amateur, and trying it out in the amateurs. I think that's fine. I think they should. I think they should play around with the idea. I don't think they should completely dismiss it. That commission, this commission, my commission, I think is the best commission, the most open and experimental commission, and I think sets the standard for all the other commissions. And so If California can mess around with it, play around with it, play around with the idea, see what works, see what doesn't, I think it's better for everybody in the future. I think fighters will appreciate it. I think in the end, everything should be and for the fighters. And this is a small thing that we can offer the fighters. Does it fix judging? Does it fix reffing? No, it doesn't. It's not supposed to. It does put a little bit more accountability on those refs, on those judges, because people are going to know the scores. They're going to look at the judges and the refs a little bit more closely. So that puts a little bit more pressure on them to do the right thing. And in the end, I think it helps more so than it hurts. So, and my stance is on open scoring, I'm all for it. I've been playing a lot of video games lately. I've been playing a lot of FIFA 22. I've been playing some NBA 2K22. I've been playing some WWE 2K22. And I love me some UFC video games. I had gone back and looked at some of the best video games, some of the lists that people have put together as far as the best and the worst UFC video games of all time. I would put, as far as mechanics go, look, presence, not presence, presentation, and overall just all the little tweaks of gameplay and graphics and everything. I think UFC Undisputed, the newest one, is probably the best. Is by far the best, and that's the way it kind of should be. As time goes on, the game should get better and better and better. If you were to ask me, and I actually agree with one of the lists I found here, and I didn't look at many, so it's not like I'm like, oh, I found one list that I agreed with, and that's the one I'm going with. It's just this is literally the first list that I went for, and I'm just gonna read you guys some of the descriptions of the games, some of and their rankings of the games, and this is from Ranker.com. And it's every UFC game ranked best to worst. And so number one, best game, we're going to start with the best to the worst. Best game that Ranker.com has listed for best UFC video game goes to UFC Undisputed 3. And I would have to agree, completely agree. And for those that have played the video games, the UFC games, and they're familiar with them, UFC Undisputed 3 came out, I believe, on every platform from what I think. I don't think there's one platform that it didn't go on. It was around the time that Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 were out. It was during that time. This is 2012. It was published by Ukes, and the cover athlete at the time was Anderson Silva doing a flying knee. I think, who was that? I forgot who the opponent was. And so it says, of the various new features, UFC Undisputed 3 was known for adding a new Pride mode. And that was the big thing, because you could switch from Pride and UFC. And much like if you're familiar with any of the WWE games, Raw versus SmackDown, you can switch back and forth. This was much the same thing. It was UFC and Pride. And that was definitely something thrown out there for the OG fans at the time, which I was a Pride fan, you know what I mean? And a lot of my favorite fighters were in Pride. And then when they made the move over to the UFC, much like when WCW or ECW made the whole invasion thing that WWE had, very much the same thing. You had a lot of the Pride guys coming over. Vanderlei Silva, Crow Cop, Shogun. So with the Pride mode, you were able to compete under Pride rules. It had the entrances of the Pride. You had a Pride roster, whole Pride roster. You had, the screeching lady that does the entrances. You had everything. It was completely Pride mode. The music, You had soccer kicks, you had stomps, you had everything. It was great. Um, Players could take one-on-one opponent after the fight, go into the next one, and in the same night, you had tournament modes. You had damage carrying over. You had commentary provided by Boss Ruin, Steven Quadros, Lena Hart. You had a new submission system that was implemented in that game. The striking for the game evolved compared to the others, and you had a dozen new features and fighters and rules and graphics, and it was just by far the best UFC game. Most enjoyable. It's fun. You know what I'm saying? Like WWE 2K22 is a great game compared to UFC WWE Here Comes the Pain or WWE Raw versus SmackDown. Those aren't obviously graphics wise, certain gameplay aren't up to the level of 2K22, but as far as an enjoyable factor, far exceeds any other game that's come out. This is same goes for UFC Undisputed 3. I'm just gonna go a couple of the top 5. UFC Undisputed 2010 is number 2. That included new arenas, new improved striking. You had Kimbo in there. You had Shaq. You had the Tap Out crew in there. So it was a fun game, an enjoyable game. 2009, the very first one. UFC Undisputed 2009. This was the first UFC video game that ever come out under the Zuffa era. This was 2009, PlayStation 3, 360. And it was just an incredible game. You had Forrest Griffin on the cover. It was just a fun game. Obviously, the mechanics, the graphics were all pretty good, but were very limited in terms of especially gameplay, especially mechanics of fighting. Very basic, but effective and fun. And so definitely that's I believe top number 3. Number 4 is EA UFC 3, which was fine. It was good. It was enjoyable. That came out in 2018. That was right before this newest one. And then top 5, EA Sports UFC 2. Another good one. And the great roster, improved striking, improved mechanics. You had 2 different covers with Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor. You had, the graphics got better, visuals got better, roster got better. That's pretty much the same goes for all the others. So those are some of the best games. And then you get into the rest of them. You have the rest of the top 10. So yeah, the newest one is number 6, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with. I kind of like it. Then you have EA Sports MMA. I believe that one had... Yeah, that was the one that EA came out with Bellator. They had a lot of Bellator fighters on that one. Fedor Emelianenko, Randy Couture. You had EA Sports UFC. That came out in 2014. You had the Ultimate Fighting Championship. That was released on Dreamcast. I have that one. You have Sudden Impact, UFC Sudden Impact, UFC Tap Out 2, and UFC Tap Out. UFC Personal Trainer. If you guys remember that, that was for the Kinect, PlayStation, and Wii's kind of motion capture systems that they came out with at the time. That was a hot new thing at the time. That came out. That came out in 2011. And you have UFC Throwdown, which is pretty much number 14 on the list. Tito Ortiz and Charles Lewis in the card, and on the roster. I played a few of these. um, definitely the mechanics, the rosters, the graphics. As you go further and further down the list, it doesn't really get much better. It actually gets pretty bad. They were still fun though. They were still there. You couldn't do much with them, but they were fun games. But I agree. Undisputed 3 is still my all-time favorite UFC game, specifically for the Pride mode, and I hope they eventually bring that back. I think that'll be awesome to have. That is definitely something I think they should bring back. But those are some of the games that had come out, and I'm sure you guys may or may not have played any of them. But those are actually some of my favorites, and I kind of agree with this list. I would have put UFC, the newest one, EA4. I'd probably put that a little bit higher because of the roster, because of the graphics, because of the mechanics, because of the presentation. Everything just looks good, and that's with Masvidal and Israel on the cover. I thought just that alone, you have to put it a little higher. You know what I mean? Um, you know, so I don't know. Let's get to this weekend's fights. You have one championship. You have Andrade versus Kwan. That's in Singapore. Is one championship, 158. You have UFC Fight Night 207, Volkov versus Rozenstruik. This is a big UFC card this weekend. Ivalov versus Dan Ige. Lucas Almeida versus Michael Trizano. Paulina Botello, Karina Silva, Alonzo Menfield, Askar Masharov, Felice Herring, the return of Felice Herring, who's been around for I don't know how long and only has a 14-9 record, which is crazy. But she's had a long layoff here and there versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who I had just mentioned earlier in the podcast that had been booked for a fight. She's fighting this weekend. That's yeah. There you go. Preliminary card headlining is Alex De Silva versus Joe Solenki. You have. Let me look at the undercard, see if there's anybody that stands out. J.J. Aldrich, Aaron Blanchford is a curtain jerker. They are kicking off the actual card itself. So yeah, Felice Herring versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz. This is a tough one because Felice she's a tough outing for almost anybody. She's well-rounded. She's an OG, but she's had a long layoffs, and I don't know how she makes a living, dude. I really don't. I don't know how some of these fighters make a living when they only fight once every 2 years. It's crazy. She must be coaching. She must be doing OnlyFans. I don't know what she's doing. Karolina has had a tough outing these past few years with some of her fights. She's been stopped a couple of times. I think this is a big do or die moment for her. If she loses this fight, I could see them cutting her. I could see them cutting either one of these girls. I don't really have an opinion either way on this fight. Felice Herring, maybe just on aggressiveness. I could see her winning the fight. Alonzo Menfield versus Askar Musharraf. 23-7 for Askar. 11-3 for Alonzo. We'll see how this goes. I'm gonna go with Masharov on this fight. I don't know. I gotta look at the betting lines. Paulina Botello versus Karina Silva. I like Paulina a lot. I think she's actually very attractive. Karina Silva, I don't know too much of. I'm gonna go with Paulina just as a fan favorite. Lucas Almeida versus Michael Trizano. And Mofsar Ivalov is undefeated, 15-0 versus Dan Ige, 15-5. This is a big fight for Dan Ige to maintain his spot in the division. Ivalov, I think, is a favorite, considerable favorite over Ige. I wouldn't put anything past Ige though. He's a fantastic fighter. He's well rounded. His IQ in the ring is pretty good. It's just when he's fighting a guy who's a pretty dominant striker, is very competitive on the feet. Should be an interesting outing. Should be an interesting fight here. I'm gonna go Evilov. I tend to agree with the betting lines. I think he's probably gonna take it. I don't think Ige loses too much, but if he momentum wise, this is a big fight for him. Volkov versus Rozenstruik. I believe Rozenstruik may be the favorite. I'm not sure. I believe he might be the favorite. 34-10 for Volkov, and then 12-3 for Rozenstruik. This is going to be I want to say, I'm not sure where these guys are in the division. I know they're top 10, middle of the road, top 10. It should be an interesting fight. This doesn't catapult any single one fighter, even if he has a fantastic, knockout victory into any title contention fight. This is just maintain their spot. This is a maintain their middle of the division top 10 spot. This is what this fight means for each of these guys. And so, should be a fun night. This is in Las Vegas at the Apex Center. Woo! And that's your card for this weekend. And I believe those are some of your main fights for this weekend. I could be missing one or two, but I don't think I am. Maybe a boxing fight. I'm not sure. But that's it, man. That's our show. I want to thank you guys all for joining me, for listening. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review, share. Until next time, this is the Combat Source Podcast.